So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. We're so glad that you are here. This is the second part of a two-part webinar series on data quality. So the first part was data quality standards, which was posted a couple weeks ago, and we'll put the link in the chat to the YouTube video if you guys weren't able to make that one. But this is the second part of the series on data quality assessment. So without any further ado, we'll move on. So just a few quick housekeeping notes. Please introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us your name, the office that you're joining from, and your job title. And I already see that there's some people in the chat that have started that, so thank you so much. This webinar will be held in English. However, we have enabled the automated translation captions. And in order to do that, you can click on Show Captions, or you might see the little three dots that says more on the bottom. Click on that, click on captions, and then it'll bring you to that. Please enable the translation and your caption language, and it should work. If you have any issues, just let me know and I can try to help you. And if this pops up, make sure you choose your caption language on the bottom. If you have any questions, please write them in the chat box. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded and we will send it out to you afterwards. And then we will be sending out resources and the slide deck to you as well. So just a quick agenda, the welcome and introduction. Then we'll have the presentation, which will be about 55 minutes to an hour, and then we'll have a few more minutes for Q&A at the very end, and then some closing remarks. Now, with the first part of the webinar, we have the same presenters, Nestor Mogollon, the Director for Meal at Azure International and Meal TLL Chair. And we also have Fahim Safi, the Senior Technical Advisor for Meal here at Azure International, and also a Meal TLL member. So without further ado, I will stop sharing, and Fahim, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Thank you, Carrie, for the introduction. Let me share my screen. Can you please confirm if you could see my screen?
Yeah. Can you put it in presentation mode?
Yeah, sure. There you
go. Okay. Good morning, everybody. For those of you that were not present in the first webinar, I would suggest that you look at that one, because in this presentation, we are going to use some of the concepts that we presented in the first webinar. Okay. So that is just, we're going to be a little bit of review at the beginning, but then we will continue using bases that you already participated in the first one. Okay, today we are going to do the follow-up. In the first webinar we did how to introduce the 5 quality standards in our meal plan. And today we are going to go further and say how we're going to assess the quality of our meal system. And that is what we call DQA. So very quickly, what we are going to cover in this session is what is a DQA and what are the quality standards we are going to use, how we select the indicators for the DQA, and then we are going to go through the process, how to conduct the DQA based in 3 stages. Okay. Okay, I got a question for you. Can you continue that? Let me, and you can put in the chat the responses, or you can open your mic and you can say, true or false, the goal of a data quality assessment is to eliminate all data limitations. What do you think? Is true or false? Can I see your responses in the chat, or if somebody can open the mic, they can respond. I can see some answers coming in. Okay. It's true or false. The goal of data quality assessment is to eliminate all data limitations. Okay. I see already some answers. Good. Can we continue? Yes, the response is false, and we are going to see why. So when we talk about data quality, we are going to look at some what we call key trade-offs. First, quality versus cost. You can see in the graph on the screen, you can see that it will be some point that we can go trying to get the best quality, but the problem will be the cost. So the idea is to balance the cost and the quality. And also, what are the challenges and limitations that we have? Let's say the context where we are implementing our project. For example, it could be that we are implementing, like most of the time, in a security where security is actually a limitation that may not allow us to get the quality of data that we really want to. So the idea is that our data should be as complete and as consistent as management needs and resources permit, which means that basically we are going to have the ideal quality, but what we want to have is enough quality to make management decisions and also according to the resources that we have. Okay, let's continue. Okay, what is a DQA then? A DQA, basically what the DQA is to assess the functionality of our meal system. When I say the meal system, that includes everything. And we are going to see more in detail what is it. And the idea is to examine the system to determine whether they produce the quality data using the 5 data standards that we review in the previous webinar, which is reliability, validity, timeliness, precision, and integrity. Those are the standards that we got. And then what is the purpose of the DQA? The purpose, in summary, is to see the strengths and the weaknesses of our data according to the 5 data quality standards. It means we apply the 5 quality standards and then we decided what are the strengths and weaknesses of that. And also, why we do a DQA is because to see if the integrity of our data can be trusted to influence the management decision. Because at the end of the day, you know that we collect data to make decisions. So we want to know if my data is, the integrity of the data is actually going to be good to influence my decision making. Let's continue. And then we have a data quality assessment process. And again, this process is going to help the organization or the project to determine the status of the quality at the given time at the opportunity. And also it's going to help the organization to develop any strategies needed to fill the gaps in terms of data quality. Let's continue. The next one. Then the DQA process through a series of pointed questions on data quality and data management. We are going to look for the responses. We are going to look for the answers to those questions to see if at the end the quality of our data is good enough for what we need. Okay. What is not a data quality, a DQA? A DQA is not an audit. There is audit. USAID, for example, they have data audit that is exactly the same as a finance audit, which is more very, very strict. But DQA is not an audit. Also, a DQA is not an exercise that seeks to find fault or to place blame on somebody. Say, oh, you did this is wrong. Oh, you did this or not. No, this is not the DQA. And also, DQA is not an exercise, something that we should be scared of. You know, a DQA is an exercise for us to learn about the strengths and weaknesses of the data. So the DQA is the opportunity for us and for the project to understand the result better and to make improvements through some strategies. Let's continue. Again, just a review. These are the 5 data quality standards that we already review in the first webinar. And you see at the end, we had one that is completeness. All data are complete, meaning that the data that we are collecting represent according to the definition of the indicator. But for the DQA, for the checklist that we're going to use, we are going to use the first 5 ones. Okay, you see validity, reliability, integrity, precision, and timeliness. Okay, let's continue. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do, we assess the quality of indicators. And let's go through some of the standards, some of the criteria, I would say, that we're going to use to assess each indicator through the 5 data quality standards. So what we are going to assess, the quality of the indicator, if the indicator is a direct measure. For example, let's say we are measuring the percentage of farmers that are adopting agricultural practices, or the percentage of children that with the percentage of children that are malnourished. That is a direct measurement. But it could be an indirect measurement. For example, we cannot measure food security directly, but we use the food consumption score as an indirect measurement of food security. That's what it means. And is it clear what data should be collected? What are the data collection instruments for that indicator? What is the data collection method? The database management? What is the actual data collected? All of these we're going to assess through in an indicator. Let's continue. There are some trade-offs, as we already mentioned, when you do the trade-off between the quality and the cost. So for each indicator, if we're going to do a very rigorous DQA for each indicator, so requires time and also require resources. And that is why we cannot do many indicators that we are going to see later on. And then the question is, which indicators should be scheduled for the assessment? Normally, one of the criteria we should use most of the critical for the management decision making. Some indicators that are critical for decision making. And then those that are most critical, we need to take an extra step to verify the data. Okay, let's continue with some other criteria. Okay, for example, normally what we select as the indicators, the standard indicators that are reported to the donor. Depending which donor are you working with, you are working let's say with Danida, with ADRA, Canada, they have the donor, USAID, BHA. All donors have their own indicators. So when you do a DQA, one of the criteria is you use those indicators from the donor that the donor required to be reported even in a quarterly basis, on annual basis, semi-annual. But let's say at least we need to do a data quality assessment every year, and it will depend also on the period of the project. If you have a 5-year project versus a 1-year project, at least for 1-year project, we need to do a DQA at least once a year. Okay. Another criteria for all new indicators within the 6 months of establishing the baseline. In general, the rule of thumb, I cannot do a DQA before 6 months of starting your project. And the reason is because during those 6 months, you are starting implementing your meal system. Your custom indicators, meaning those indicators that are not required by the donor, but the technical team required for implementing the project. So those custom indicators don't have the standards of your project. That is why we need to be sure that the quality of those custom indicators are good enough. And then the question is, how many indicators I'm going to use to do a DQA? Here says 3 to 5. By experience, I would recommend no more than 5, no more than 3. And you are going to see why I say that, because DQA is an exercise that demands a lot of time. Okay, let's continue with some other criteria. If you have some indicator that you suspect that the quality have an issue, let's say maybe, oh, we are not sure that the percentage had been calculated quite well, or you are coming like, oh, most of the time it's 100%, 100%, 100%. When you achieve 100% of all, I'm not saying that it's wrong, but if you having all the time 100%, oh, many people said, oh, must be, or we are too good, or maybe we are too conservative in putting our targets. So that is an indication that I need to do some quality assessment for that indicator. And when they say important indicators, it means what indicator the program itself have indicated that are high importance for the sector or for the area that are implemented. Okay. Then if we categorize the indicators, normally DQA is done more on outcome indicators rather than output indicators. And why? Because the standards for good data quality are applied more to results that to assess the data quality than the output. Because output normally we count things and are easy to collect. Uh, can you continue? I think I put yeah. For example, an output indicator, we say many of the data quality standards are not applicable to this because in the same way that for outcome level. For example, an outcome indicator, an output indicator should be the number of individuals a project trains in is an output indicator. Yeah. Then to see if the data is valid for that, we just have the attendance sheet, which is easier, and we are going to have timely because normally the attendance sheet is signed at the moment that people come to the training. So the data is going to be timely, it's valid because we have everything there, and it's more precise, and never is going to be an issue for the output indicators. Let's see, I think I got an example. For outcome indicators, it's different because normally we collected, before going to that one, we collected as percentages, and also we collected through annual surveys, baseline and line. So that is more a problem on data quality. So now we're going to go how we conduct the DQA. And there are 3 stages. Stage 1 is the prepare and plan. Stage 2, conduct the DQA in the field. And stage 3 is summarizing the findings and produce the report. And now pass to Fahim. So he is going to explain the stage 1, and then I will continue with stage 3. Okay.
Thank you, Nestor. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Nestor has explained the DQA process and why it's important for good implementation and decision making. And just to add to that piece, we all as a project management team or implementation team, we really need a good quality data. Now, no matter how good we do our implementation, if we don't track and collect our M&E data, we won't be able to show the impact of our program. So for that, we need to do good quality data and to determine if we are doing a collecting good quality data, DQA, data quality assessment is very important. So the first stage when it comes to planning DQA or implementing DQA is the preparation stage. And there are some key steps that we need to implement in order to prepare for a full good data quality assessment. First, it's important to organize a DQA meeting with the project team, and that includes everyone in the team, whether they're meal team who directly collect the data or the project implementation team, including program manager, for example. So we need to organize a meeting with all these staff engaged in the implementation and collection of data. And why we need to do that? Because they are all engaged in the program, and their input is necessary when it comes to DQA. Second part of the preparation stage is we need to hold an indicator review meeting for DQA. So Nestor earlier explained, the number of indicators we need to include. So for that, we need to review these indicators. What indicators are necessary and why we need to include them in our DQA. So for part of that process, we need to fill out a DQA checklist for each indicator we select for the assessment. We'll show what the DQA checklist is and how we could use that to collect information about the indicator we selected. So it highlights missing information to ask about during the meeting with the project team. So we need to determine and highlight that missing information when we meet with our project team to review indicators for DQA. And the third step is arrange meetings with your project team. Ask them to arrange meetings on your behalf with their partners who provide data. So there could be like sub implementation team or partners that are part of the project team, or field team who will provide some data to our DQA process. So we need to arrange meetings with those staff from the field or from the partners, if we do have partners, to collect and arrange that information. So part of the preparation and planning stage is that we need to, from the beginning, we need to define roles and responsibilities for our staffs who are engaged in the DQA process. Now, just to remind everyone is that DQA is not the only, not the responsibility of the meal team only, because a lot of other staffs in the projects are engaged in data collection, and implementation. They're all part of the DQA process. So we need to identify all those key staff members in their roles and responsibility. For example, for meal advisor, the person will lead the DQA process and to ensure compliance with the donors guidelines, whether it's a USAID funded program or European donor or any other. In principle, in practice, the data quality standards are the same. So we need to identify that person who leads this process. Other people engaged are the field meal officers who have access to the records, who have firsthand data from the field. So we need to, assign their responsibilities and explain data processes. Program participants, in some cases, depending on the indicators, we may need to do a lot of data verification in the field. And that includes interviewing field team and program beneficiaries. So it's important to define those responsibilities for each person engaged in the process. And based on that, we also need to develop a DQA work plan. This will establish a timeline for conducting the DQA. For example, if we have 3 indicators, what sites we are visiting, who are we interviewing, or what types of data we are collecting for our indicators. So we may divide, for example, indicators per day, one indicator one day and another indicator the second day. So depending on the number of indicators in the field arrangements, and then we need to establish a timeline for conducting it and identify field locations and offices for data verification. So that's also part of the DQA work plan, which we need to include those locations to verify our data. Now, we do need some tools. Again, we will share these tools after our webinar with everyone. And these are some of the tools we need for DQA. For example, the DQA assessment checklist. It's a checklist that's used to assess the quality of data based on the 5 data quality standards. We'll show an example in the next few slides. Peers for each indicator. Peer is the performance indicator reference sheet. It's basically a USD language. Each indicator has a performance indicator reference sheet which actually explain the indicator. For example, the peers includes a definition of the indicator, who collects the data, how we measure the indicator, how often we collect the data for that indicator. So it's actually explained the indicator, and it's very important for the DQA to have peers for each indicator, which explain the processes of data collection and including data quality. Now, for some other donors, they may use a different language, not pairs, because as I said, pairs is more of a USD language, but it's basically an explanation of the indicator, the definition in how we collect. So that's again another significant tool to have when we are conducting DQA. We may need last quarterly reports submitted by the project. It might be semi-annual for some programs. So depending on the reporting schedule, we need to review the last quarterly report for our DQA. Data verification worksheet is another tool we will use to verify the data for that indicator. DQA questions for meetings with projects. We may need to specify some of the questions when we meet with our project teams. And for DQA, we need to ask those questions. Similar to that, DQA questions for site visits to the project. For field team, we may have different questions, so we need to list them before we conduct those interviews. And summary sheet of data quality and verification issues. It will list all the, when we do verification, we'll list all the issues we identified during that exercise. So these are some of the basic tools we need to have to conduct a good quality DQAs. These are some of the additional documents that we need to have to conduct our DQAs. Organizational charts with meal positions. As I mentioned earlier, it's not the meal team job to conduct the DQ, of course, to conduct the DQA, but a lot of other staff members are engaged in the process. So we need to have that organizational chart, which also include meal positions on their responsibilities and how they are engaged in the process. So we need to have that organizational chart for the project. Of course, written policies and procedures for data collection. Each M&E system and data collection system should have those procedures and policies on how we collect data all the way from the field to the main data management system, and data collection forms for the indicators being assessed. Specifically, we need to have those tools and forms for those indicators that we selected for DQA, and we need to review them. Data sets and calculation sheets. These are more on the calculation side on how we calculate our data, and we need to have those data sets in a survey report or a written data collection methodology narrative, which actually explain the sample size, confidence interval level, and margin. So it's basically more on the survey report. We may have some indicators that we collect during our survey, and they are also included in the DQA. So we need to have that methodology narrative on what the sample size was and what the confidence interval and margin of error. So these are some of the additional tools the person who's leading the DQA should have in order to conduct the DQA. So this is a DQA checklist. That's again an important tool for data quality assessment. It helps DQA team members assess the quality of that indicator in data collected by walking through each one of the 5 criteria, the 5 data quality standards that we mentioned earlier. And this will be used to assess the quality of the data. So if you look at this checklist, for example, validity has some questions, or relab. Each of these steps, each of these standards have some questions that we need to ask from a field team, and in order to verify and confirm the quality of the data based on that standard. So that's a tool we need to use to interview our team. This provides a method for highlighting strengths and weaknesses of our data, and then recommended next steps for improving the quality of the data. And it does have a comment section where we can provide our recommendations or highlight key issues with our data, and ask the DQA team to judge the quality of the data based on the completed worksheet. So this is basically the core process of our DQA. We collect data based on these standards, and then it helps the DQA team to make judgment about the quality of our data. So this is a very critical tool when it comes to collecting data on DQA. And the DQA checklist should be filled out for each indicator. Now, might be 3 indicator, we would use, we would fill that for each of the indicator we included in the DQA exercise. And this allows one to pinpoint where data quality errors are introduced when more than one staff reports on a given indicator. So we all know it sometimes in some of our DQ data quality collection, data collection processes, there might be more than one staff engaged in the process. So this helps us identify maybe some of the issues and errors when more than one person is engaged in the data quality process, in data collection process, because one person may use one data collection tool, other may use a different or understand the tool differently. So it could help us understand those issues based on different people who are collecting data. And gaps in information required can be filled by use of the indicator peers, meeting with your project and with your project partners and subcontractors. So everyone engaged in that process, this will help, this will be used to fill that data by the indicator peers and then meeting with the project team. Stage 2 is conducting the DQA. The first one was the planning side. Now stage 2 is how we conduct it. Over to you, Nestor.
All right, thank you,
Thank
Joaquin. Now we already plan. We have our DQA work plan. We already have our tools, and now the time to go dirty, so to actually do the exercise. So the first things that we are going to do is we are going to meet with the mill team and probably the project management in the main office. Let's say, you go to the country office, let's say this HQ people go, the meeting will be with the project team, or if you doing the DQA as well, you do in the office. The first thing is to have all the tools that Fahim just mentioned. You have your laptop or your iPad, whatever you are going to use, with all the questionnaire they are going to use it. Let's continue. Then you meet with the team and you start asking the questions, especially to the mill team and the manager, the more general question on the mill system. Okay. And depending on the position that there are, let's say some countries, they have just mill project manager, but some other countries, they have like a mill manager at the national level and then have a mill manager at the project level. If those are the positions, so you can add at that different level, but you will start with the more general questions that are related more with the system. Can you continue? For example, you are going to assess the design and implementation of the project data collection and reporting system. Like, for example, the steps and protocols, and also the potential threats to the data quality created by the project data management and reporting system. So you are going to go through all those kind of stuff which are more general to give you an idea how the mill system is organized and how the mill system is working and what are the protocols that it should be in place. Let's continue. And this is the data flow of the documentation that at that point you are going to ask about who collects the data, what form is used, what is the data check, who reviews it, who is aggregating and summarizing the data, who is analyzing the data, where are the checks in the system. So, and when you start asking those questions, also you ask for the evidence, you know. For example, you say what for are they using for these indicators. Okay, now can you show me what are the forms and how is the data checked? Let's say, oh, they say, for example, yeah, when the volunteers send the data to the meal project or the meal, yeah, the meal officer, so we have these checks. Okay, what tool you use to do that one? How you do produce the feedback to the people to see if the data is wrong or not. So in all those questions, you need to ask for evidence. It's not enough that they say we have it, because if they say we have it and they don't show you the evidence, that is already a data quality issue. Okay, let's continue. And then once you finish all these general questions about the system, we start using the DQA checklist that Fahim showed before. So then you start the first round of questions with the mill people in the office. So you already have your 3 indicators. Let's say that one of the indicators, let's say the food consumption score. Then you select that indicator and you start the DQA checklist, all the questions about validity. So they have a specific question for that indicator. And then according to the answers, you are going to mark if the responses that they're giving to you and the evidence are complying with the questions for that indicator. And then in the column of comments, you are going to make some comments if there is any gaps or it's good or not. So you go through all the question on validity for that indicator, and then you continue with the question on reliability, and then timeliness, then integrity. All of these, when it's completed, you start with the second indicator and then with the third indicator. That is why I said, don't go too excited and trying to do the DQA for all your indicators that you have 20, 15, 10. No, because this is a very intense and very rigorous and very detailed exercise. So that is why you need to be very careful selecting your indicators. And then because you have to apply the checklist for each indicator first at the office, and then we will do something else. So for that, you already got some of the questions. I'm going to present some of the examples, but also we're going to provide you with some other example of questions. Okay, so once you do that, let's continue. Then you already complete the DQA, the checklist, and then you start do data verification. Okay, because that is why you need. Here we put as an example the last quarterly report submitted and your data verification worksheet, but it depends on when are you going to do your DQA. Let's say that you decided to do the DQA at the end of the year. So the question is, what is the last report that you have for those indicators? If it's an annual report, you use the annual report. If it's a semi-annual report, you use the semi-annual report. If it's the quarterly report, you use that one. And I'm going to tell you why you need to use the last one, because for data verification. So then you need to examine the data of the indicator for each of the 3 months of the period that you are going to evaluate. Okay. And then you are going to compare the value that the project team has submitted in the report with what is actually in the records. So that is what we talk data verification. Let's say if they submitted, they say they have achieved 60% of the children have improved, or 60% of the people know the 5 critical times of washing the hands. So then you are going to verify in the records if that 60 or 80 or 70% exist. Okay, so let's continue. And I think I got an example on the data verification. So you have to trace and verify the selected indicator result, meaning you start from what has been submitted, that is the record that you have in your report, and then you are going to go down, trace down until where is the initial indicator. Because you know that most of the projects are not implemented in just one site. The data is coming from different sites. So which means that they have been aggregated at different points. So when you do the trace and verification, you go down to see, okay, did 1,000 or these 60,000 come from these 2 sites that, and then you go down until we see, okay, we got evidence that this is adding to this one. And for example, if we are talking about coverage of beneficiaries, let's say that we have distributed, for example, 5,000 vouchers, food vouchers. Okay, for which side is coming? So these 5,000 are the adding of side 1, side B. So all of this we have to track, and we're going to show you okay? And let's continue. This is an example of how to do the trace and verification. You see, you got the records at the beginning, and then you trace down where is originated. You know, like they report the 65 come from district 1, and then this district 1 comes from side 1, and side 2 is 20 plus 45 is 65, and then the 65 so this is the way. And then you can go down to see that the all levels they are matching. And then the question is, what happened? And that is happened that people reported 65, but then when you go down, you only find 55. So where those other 10 come from? So that is a problem already on data quality. No, or it can happen that we reported 65, but then when we go down, we found that actually we achieved 100. And that will be another problem. Okay. Okay, this gives you an idea how we do the exercise on data verification and trace that. Okay. Then we are going to do the data verification. It could be at project side, but also if we have, like, for example, if we have a consortium, that data is the lead, we have to do also data verification with the partners also. You know, we need to do the same exercise, not only for other side, but also with the partner. Okay. And then with that verification, you are going to compare with what has been reported, and to see if that match. It doesn't match, either is less or more, then there is an issue of data quality. Okay, let's continue. Then the next step is those things that I'm talking about now, we are doing at the office level. You know, because there are where the records are, we look at that one. Okay, it could be that when you fill the data quality checklist at that point, most of the things seem that, oh, that's pretty good. But then it's different story when you go to the field. because you have to do the visit at the field level, especially you have to visit the people that are involved in the data quality. And then you start doing the questions using the tools that we already, and we are going to look at where people are recording. For example, one of the key questions that I always ask, okay, can you give me the definition of this indicator? At the office level, the mill people, all they know the definition of the indicator. But when you go down to the field, the people actually involved collecting the data, when I ask them, some of them, they don't know. And they say, how are you collecting the data if you don't know the definition of the indicator? So then there is a gap there. So the field visit, it's helped you to get a better idea. If you just stop at the office level, you might say, oh, everything is okay here. But if you go down to the field, and remember that sometimes we have even beneficiaries, but also we had volunteers. Okay, let's continue for the sake of time. There are some of examples of the questions that you can ask. For example, what procedures use, if we want to know what procedures are used for data collection and analysis, you can ask, describe me how data is management from point to point of data collection to final reporting, you know? And those questions, and we are going to give you more questions like that. And there is some other example. For example, do data reflect the current situation? If that I want to know, then I can ask, how long does it take to go from data collection to reporting? You know, let's continue. Then these are some of the questions for the functional areas, the ones that we do at the beginning before filling the data quality checklist. These are some of the questions that you can use to explore the quality of the system itself. Okay, let's continue. And then the second phase of the data verification, as I already mentioned, we need to go to the partner offices. If you have a consortium, you have to go to the partner offices to do the checklist, but also to do the data verification. If it's a project that just ADRA, you go to the project side offices, then to see how the data is being collected there, and if they are compliant with the data quality standards, and how the data is transferred to the Moyen office. Okay, let's continue. And then we go to a stage 3, which is summarizing the findings. And then we talk about, I left Fahim to continue with that one.
Thank you, Nestor. All right, so we did our planning preparation, we conducted our DQA. Now what? We summarize our findings. And that's a very important stage. You know, DQA is not a donor requirement. It's a donor requirement sometimes, but we don't do that for a donor's requirement. You know, Nestor mentioned earlier, we do DQA to improve the quality of our data. So that's why it's important to summarize all the findings. So stage 3 is a very important step in conducting DQA. So part of that process is data verification. Nestor explained on how we do that. But for the reporting part, the summarizing findings, we need to compare the data that we recorded on data verification sheet from the project with the data we recorded on the worksheet from the field partner. So that has to be compared from the data verification sheet to the field data we collected on that sheet. Does that match up or not? If it doesn't match up, obviously there is an issue. So we continue the process comparing the data we documented for each field site that we visited for this process. And then based on this assessment, we need to determine if the value is accurate or not. Is it the same value or not? So if it's not the same value reported, of course, there is a issue with that data. So that's an important step in verifying the data verification process. So For that, we need, as we mentioned earlier, completing the DQA checklist using data from the questions that for the project team we ask, or if they are partners, we use a similar process. We completed the data verification sheets, and then any other documentation we examine during those meetings. So we record all those data in those sheets. We record actions required based on each data quality issue. It's important to highlight those issues that we found, and then record actions for those quality issues, and then make an overall judgment on the quality of the data for the indicator. Now, it's the person who is leading the data quality assessment. It's their job to make that judgment. And how we make that judgment, it might be partially in compliance, or it's fully in compliance. So that judgment has to be made by the person who's leading that process. For each indicator, we need to briefly summarize data quality issues from that DQA checklist form. And that should be based on those 5 quality standards. If the indicator selected for data verification, we need to summarize the result of that verification. And again, actions that need to be implemented to resolve those issues. And if there is more than one side again, for those indicators, we need to summarize the issues for each of those indicators across project, and noting which field are the source of data quality problems. Now, for same indicator, there, data from one site may not have any issues, but other sites may have significant issues. And I'm being part of the process. I've witnessed this in the field. In one of our program in Madagascar, we, for the data flow or data coming into the main data management system, one side had a very good data inflow, on time, timely data for the same indicator, but for other site, they had significant issues where the data was not reported on time, and they had a lot of issues. So we need to identify those sites where issues are existing. So this is how we summarize our findings for each issue. This is just an example. For example, for each indicator, we need to make judgment for each of these 5 data quality standards. For example, number of jobs created with USGSS. This is an indicator, for example, we included in the DQA. Now, for validity, was this did we fully meet the standard, or was it partially meeting the standard? So we need to make that judgment based on the evidence, based on our verification, and then summarize our finding in the summary, and why validity has partially meets the standard. And we need to explain that for each of the standards that we have analyzed. For reporting, as I mentioned, we need to compile our DQA findings, and that would include summarizing key observations and discrepancies found during that assessment. We need to provide examples of data inconsistencies or reporting errors. It's very important to highlight these issues and highlight gaps in documentation or data collection processes. Sometimes there might be an issue in the data collection processes that would lead to a bigger data quality issue. So, the field team may not have an issue in terms of collecting the data, but it might be an issue in the data collection processes that they may not be following correctly. So we need to highlight that. For developing a DQA report, we need to include an overview of the assessment, including date, location, and the number of indicators we assessed, findings based on those 5 data quality standards, the table we presented earlier, or whether it's fully meeting the standard or partially meeting the standards. We need to include our recommendations for corrective actions, and then create and develop an action plan with responsible people in timelines that we need to follow up. So the purpose of our DQA, Nestor explained that earlier, is to improve the system. If we find that issues, we find problems in our data, we need to highlight them, share them with our teams, and do a follow-up on those issues in the future, in the coming days, in order to address and resolve those issues. So after we highlight and document all these issues, we share and discuss these findings. We present findings to project leadership, meal teams, and field teams. We often do this through a kind of post DQA workshop with the team and present our findings to everyone, not only meal teams, but the project leadership, including program managers, and they need to understand these major, or even if they are small issues, it has to be presented and discuss corrective actions and implementation timelines. We need to have backup documentations, and we need to include them as annexes. Backup documentation here refers to the field documents that we collect for each indicator, and that includes records in the field. If the team is collecting data in books or tools, we need to take pictures of them and include them in our report and ensure the teams buy in for necessary improvements. Sorry. So our team, field team, implementation team is responsible for improving this data. So we need to take their input and ensure they are convinced on our issues. It's, again, not an audit. We are not complaining about anyone, but we are just trying to improve the quality of our data for good quality implementation. So develop an action plan. Again, it identifies specific actions, assign responsible staff for each one, and set clear deadlines for improvement. And if important, if necessary, we need to do a capacity building and training to our staff. A refresher training on data collection, validation, and reporting, or then reinforce the importance of data integrity and adherence to data quality standards. So it's good to have a refresher training, a brief training to our team who are engaged in the data collection on some of these qualities. So for the implementation of corrective actions and follow-up, we schedule follow-up DQAs to verify improvements. Now, we may do another DQA maybe 6 months after this one or 1 year after that, and then we verify those improvements. We could update our standard operating procedures and improve data collection tools where necessary. As I mentioned earlier, there might be issues with tools, maybe issues with processes. So once we improve them, we update those SOPs for future data quality. And then report progress to donor and project leadership. If a donor is engaged, we report those findings to them, and of course, project leadership, including one. This is an example of an action plan that we need to develop after our report. Like that includes indicator, DQA finding for that indicator, what actions we need to take, who is responsible, and the timeline to address those issues. So this is an example. We will share the template of this action plan with everyone. So as I say, the project team, the country team needs to understand, some of these key principles that they cannot do DDQA if some basics of the meal system are not functioning. So meal system is very key, critical for the data quality. So if we don't have that in place, they won't be able, or we won't be able to do a good DQA. Data verification should be routine component of the system. So we do data verification in our DQA, but as a part of the meal system, data verification is also a key steps of that meal system. Our meal manager, officer, or coordinator should frequently do that data verification in the field. And again, must understand the indicator definition in data flow. If we don't understand the indicator, we don't understand the data flow chart. If we have one, we won't be able to do a good data verification in quality standards. So this is just was a brief section on the reporting and findings. Back to you, Nestor, on the last few slides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Farid. The last thing that we want to mention here, when we were developed the data quality assessment manual for ADRA, we did a consultancy, and then we assessed some country offices, and we found some of the current challenges like stat capacity, data overload, that meaning that just one person or few people collecting a lot of data, so people were overloaded. And then another challenge is people, they didn't know where to go for support. And also we found that some mill systems are not function adequately. Like most of the time we have the indicator, we have the definition, but we don't have the tools, or if we have the tool, we don't have the guidelines how to fill out the tools. And then also one key activity in the mill is that people were not doing verification or validation of the data they are receiving for reporting. And also there were no comprehensive databases, meaning that some indicators were collected through databases and some other ones were collected through other means. And also a lack of adequate supervision. Let's continue. And some of the training issues that we found is like people have low complexity of issues, low education, mid-level. That's what we said. It means people don't know much on meal, the different procedures and processes of meal. And also we found that is no dedicated meal staff. And I know, I understand that sometimes some offices don't have the budget to have dedicated meal staff, which meaning that project director or project manager doing meal and doing logistics, so there is no person dedicated to do this, and that is an issue for data quality and lack of other logistic resources also. And what we recommended at that time is training on risk analysis in low performance system, and I think that is what I have. And then we hope that, and I think the last one, there is another one. There was another one. It was one more. Okay. What we wanted with this webinar, we hope that we have provided the son of what is a DQ8. I hope that now you understand what is DQ8, what we need to do it, what is the purpose, and we provided the tools, and hopefully you can do it. We're going to provide examples, and we are here. You have some questions and you want to do the exercise, we can be of support for you. So yeah, I would like to see if there are some of the questions that we can answer now. I saw some questions in the.
Yes, we have a number of questions. I think we lost, oh no, Fahim is back. Okay, great. But yeah, I
I'm
think we can go
sorry.
to, you're fine, Fahim. I think we can go to questions since we only have 10 minutes left. And the first one, I just lost it. The first question is a DQA necessary for all reports or just selected reports?
Okay, let me answer that question. When DQA is not something that we do like every month or every 3 months. At least we should do a DQA once a year, a DQA. And when we say it once a year, we will select which report has been submitted at that time, the last one. Okay, let's say if we are going to do the DQA in November this year, what is the last report that has been submitted in August or September? That report that are going to use to do the DQA and the indicators that have been reported in that one. Okay.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, do we need to do a DQA for every target or finding specified in the project log frame?
Fahim, you can take that one.
What was the question? Sorry, Carrie, again? It's
Do we need to do a DQA for every target or finding specified in the project log frame?
no. So I don't understand the target part, but for the log frame, we need to select indicators, and it could be 3 indicators, and then we mention recent report. It could be an annual report or a semi-annual report, and those indicators that we select will be verified. They're targets that were reported in that report, whether it's a quarterly, of course, or semi-annual report. So I hope I understand your question correctly. So for those targets that are included for those indicators that we selected for DQA will be verified in our DQA. Those 3 indicators.
Yeah, basically, the response should be no. We don't, as we mentioned, we just select what are the critical indicators for those targets that you want to do, and then you do the exercise, because the exercise is very time consuming and demanding. So I would say no. We just select 3 indicators, and then those are the ones that we're going to do DQA. And I got here a question that said, let's assume the DQA is not a key requirement for the donor, and the program itself is relatively small. I don't know what it means relatively small. It's 1 year, 6 months. Focus on the transformative change with indigenous community settings. How can we apply the DQA approach to enhance data quality without straining the relationship between the support office and the in-country teams and undermine indigenous or traditional value systems? My first question here is, in this project, are you collecting indicators or not? I don't know who did this question. Because if we are collecting indicators, as I mentioned at the beginning, the DQA is not an exercise to blame anybody. It's an exercise, it's a learning exercise to see how what are the weaknesses and strengths of our data and how we can improve that one. So if we do that collectively in a participatory way, I don't think that will be uh, any damage in the relationship. And also, even though if it's not a requirement of the donor, for me, DQA is basic for us because we are going to do our decision making based in data. And if the quality of our data is not good, so then our decision making is going to be bad. So even though that the donor doesn't require, we can do the minimum that we can do is data verification, which is part of the DQA without doing the whole DQA, but you can do data verification. If you do data verification, you can do more than 5 indicators. Okay, I don't know if that responds the question.
Thanks, Nestor. The next question that we have is, can we allocate a budget for the DQA in the project design?
Again, you want to take that one, or I can do it? But
Yes, short answer is yes. Well, it's so meal system would have a budget. If we are doing it internally, we should definitely have budget for DQA. So it's our responsibility to include that. So short answer is yes.
yeah, and when we included, not my experience is any donor has rejected.
Great, thank you. The next question, do we need to do a DQA for indicators that do not reach the target?
You remember that we said one of the criteria is problematic indicators, and we have suspect of the quality of the indicator. If they don't reach the target, okay, that should be an indicator that we can look at that. What is the problem? It's a problem of quality. It's a problem of that people don't understand the indicator, or the tool that is being used is actually not using it the same way, but everybody that they are not captured, what is the problem? So I will include that one also in the DQA.
Great, thank you. And then how do we define partially or fully meeting the standard?
That's a good question. Okay, you see in the checklist, you have validity and they have like 4 or 5 questions, and then you have reliability and those questions. So what you do is for each question, you should say yes. Based on the evidence, the answer for this question is yes, they have this, and this. And for all the answers, for all the questions, your answer is yes, they have good evidence. They say they completely they comply with the standard. But if for one or two of those questions you don't have enough evidence, you say, oh yes, they have this one, but for example, they said, oh, they have the definition of the indicator, but there is no guidelines how to fill out the tool. So that is an issue. Then you said, oh, even though that they have the definition indicator, people know what is the definition indicator, but the tools don't have guidelines how to fill out. So that will be a not complying totally, but it's partially compliant with that. So we go that for all the answers on all the standards in the checklist, and based on that, you have to document why you say it is totally compliant or why it's partially compliant. Okay.
Thank you. And then we have another question here. Who should conduct the DQA, an internal or external person or team?
Paki, can you answer that one?
Depending on the project. So for a donor-funded program that requires a DQA, they will assign someone externally. I mean, the donor will send someone to conduct the DQA. But it's always necessary and important to do an internal DQA as well, to make sure we resolve issues before our external DQA is conducted. And it's always necessary to do this internal one so we solve the issues before an external person comes in and highlight them. So yeah, both, they could be done by both.
Great. And then we have one more question before we wrap up. Should the DQA be conducted as a separate event or can it be integrated into regular project monitoring visits?
The short answer is no. You cannot include it. You can include data verification. Yeah, that should be part of the monitoring visit. But a DQA, because if time consuming, you cannot do in your regular monitoring visit. It have to be a planned event with enough tools, and you need to agree what are the indicators that you're going to do the DQA. Because even for the external DQA that some donors done, is an event that is planned, and it's a one-time event because of the time consuming, because of the in-depth, exercise. So I wouldn't recommend to do the DQA as a just regular visit. That you can call anything else, but that is not DQA. DQA is something, is an event that needs to be prepared. But data verification, which is part of DQA, you can do it on a regular visit. But that is data verification alone is not DQA. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much, Nestor and Fahim. Really appreciate the presentation. Yes,
Yeah.
Fahim, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't know if you have asked that question. There's one more question that is on.
Oh, did I miss one?
I don't know if I was disconnected briefly, but the question is, what do you mean by not meal functioning?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, because we cannot do DQA for meal system is not functioning. The answer is yes. So in our first part of this webinar, we mentioned that DQA and data quality standards should be included in our meal system, a meal plan from the beginning. So if we don't have a meal system and we don't know what we are doing in a meal, we want to be able to do a DQA anyway. So DQA, data quality standards, are part of the meal system. And of course, we should have a meal system to do a proper DQA. Otherwise, none of the functions will be fully met anyway. So it will fail as a data quality standard. So meal system, of course, is necessary for DQA.
Yeah, adding to that, remember that at the beginning I say that the DQA is the assessment of the meal system. So if the meal system is not functioning, so we cannot do DQA. First, we need to implement and be sure that all the areas of the meal system is actually already in place and working, and then we can think about DQA. And why? Because remember, some of the questions we are asking about the indicator, the definition, who collect the data, how the data is stored, how data is analyzed. And if some of those processes are not implemented yet, so we cannot do DQA. If we do DQA, that is going to be so bad that we don't want to do that. you know?
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for all the questions. Those are really great. I have just put into the chat the link to the first part of the webinar if you missed that, and also some links for joining us on HumHub, the Meal Community of Practice. If you want to visit our meal blogs, we have a couple of them up already. And if you haven't subscribed to our Meal TLL newsletter, please do so. We'll be sending up a follow-up after this. And yes, we will be sharing all the tools that Fahim and Nestor talked about, the resources, the slides, and the recording later this week or next week. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you everyone so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next webinar. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.